Good evening. The unusual fact that Jacob blessed Pharaoh, that the Nile should rise to him, and how that's representative of the idea that Hashem is not just Hashem in the highest realms, which is also topic of deep discussion probably last year. This year the focus is on, in this series of learning this discourse called Vasilagani, the idea that God's infinity extends even to the lowest level. So what does it look like to see infinity in the lowest level? It looks a lot like King Tut probably, if the fashion didn't change that much, in this shape of Pharaoh, that he represents this idea where Jacob blesses him, that he can be the conduit for a lot of divine energy being packed into one place. And the Jewish people were destined to gut a place of its divine energy in the form of a lot of wealth. So Jews should be blessed with wealth because we know what to do with it. Here the purpose of this wealth was so that people could donate precious items, welcome, for the holy sanctuary, and in general to be fortified, to devote yourself to a life that is a little deeper than the default, what you wake up to, the race of society. And we're going to be talking about how not everybody can fully devote themselves to the practice of recognizing, being aware of Hashem, and taking that as a serious aspiration in their life. That's really not for everybody. Not everybody's going to step up to that challenge. It's really reserved, it's explained in the holy writings, for very special people that devote themselves to this, and they're called tzaddikim, righteous people. And how that is expressive of the almost impossible request is bait tidbak, that you're supposed to cleave to Hashem. The sages ask, how could you cleave to the divine presence, which is fire? An eish eichla, consuming fire. I guess we're the burning bush. The idea that a righteous person, the Amei Kulam Tzadikim, the Jews are described as a righteous nation, have this potential to achieve a connection by tidbak, to cleave, to have dveikus. There is something about every person that aspires to that in their depths, but they might express it a different way. So this class today will discuss what is that way. How could a person who feels like, I'm not going to be the guy that's sitting there 3 hours in shul davening all day. I don't want to be that. I do want to be that guy. I love that. But it's not for everybody. And they have a way to also achieve the equivalent. And we're going to discuss this on the basis of the teaching about V'shechanti b'seicham. It says, I will dwell among you. It doesn't say in the holy sanctuary that it's referring to. It doesn't say that Hashem's going to dwell in it, because the main place where Hashem resides is not in a structure. The structure is a means to allow for the miracle of this experience to take place, but it's meant to take place in a person, not in an inanimate object. And how, since it says v'seicham, it's in the plural, it doesn't say v'seichai, I'm going to dwell within it, or you, in him. It says it in the plural, indicating that everybody is supposed to achieve this mission of having Hashem dwell within them. It's not reserved for an elite class. Everyone can do it. Some people don't do it by intense meditation and extended periods of davening. They do it by devoting their resources. We're talking about Paro's resources, Pharaoh, and how he used them for the self-serving purpose of deifying himself, and saying that he made the Nile and created his own grandeur and success and the pride of the world at the time. He created himself. He really was here being ungrateful to the source of his power was Jacob's blessing, which gave him ongoing prosperity in a way that was attributable to him. So he took advantage of that and denied the truth. And therefore, as we said before, Pharaoh is representative of taking godliness down, not just to the lowest level in the regular system, but when you crack that system in a bad way, and chas v'shalom, and it goes to the dark side. What would that look like? There too, godliness can be expressed, and that is Jacob's plan, and making this possible for him by giving this blessing. So there you see in the darkest character the capacity for the most perfect partnership to take place, which was the partnership, and you could talk in our times of the relationship between the Jews and the Americans, for example, or Canadians if you live amongst us. I have to talk about the police force here in a minute, God bless them, and how that relates to the source where we're learning this from, which is the intention of Jacob that the Egyptians and the Jews, his children, should get along. That they would be a team, a team where they're going to gather a lot of energy, a lot of divine energy in the form of wealth and the proper use of that wealth. And therefore, the world of Klippa, of Pharaoh, can't get it right, thank you, are both driven to the common purpose. Now, I just want to insert this idea again to remind you what we spoke about before, about how there's three personalities in this whole system. I thought I'd go into one of these amazing texts that I have lined up, but it's hard to resist. I just want to review this is important. There's three personages that describe the narrative of the world. And they involve the beginning and the end. The first Redeemer and the last Redeemer. So Moses is there in two forms. Moses and the Mashiach, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, and the Davidic line are intrinsically related. The way the Rebbe explains it is that Moshe was the giver of the wisdom that will be ultimately utilized with his antecedent? No. The one who takes the gavel, the throne, and expresses the ultimate divine state forevermore is Mashiach. So we said Moshe was from the world of Tehu, chaos, which is a lot of energy packed into just a few words. And Mashiach is the unpacking of that. Remember we said Moses had a lisp or a stutter. He was unable to express his incredible wisdom in words. That would be a descent for the incredible experience of that. So Moshe was unable to articulate it until the giving of the Torah when he was healed. So there is a premonition of what is going to remain eternal through Mashiach. So then Moshe was able to express Torah and communicate. We said that came from the power of Bittul, one of the things we said before, through the power of just saying, I'm going to be completely devoted as a chariot to Hashem. and Hashem spoke through his vocal cords. Mashiach is going to be the ultimate voice, the ability to express the unfathomable chaos of pure energy of Moshe Rabbeinu. We said he was from the previous sabbatical, which was, Arizal says, is a completely spiritual existence, but it's a realm where these souls from another dimension literally come into the world that starts with the letter base, the Bereshis. According to the Arizal, that's the physical world, and there's no need for another 5 sabbaticals for the ultimate 7, as the Kubbalian, the other opinion is. Anyways, so the guy in the middle of this story is Pharaoh, this person that already is associated with expression, communication, speech. His name means, Pharaoh means to explode, to be the source of the shining of all divine energy. And it also means to reveal. And this deep Chassidus speaks about you cannot have any revealing unless it's something that was formerly concealed. So there's an inherent narrative here of unfolding the power of the Torah. The power of the Torah is in this code, which is 600,000 letters long. And the ability to unpack it is the flip side of Pharaoh. That would be a nice title for this one. The flip side of Pharaoh. The ability to communicate not just his own arrogance, which Pharaoh was expressive of. He says, I made the Nile and I established my own might and grandeur. But Mashiach is going to be the flip side of that, dedicating that entirely towards unpacking, unveiling, making something accessible. So that's the difference between the Iris of Tehu, the light of chaos, and which is Moshe, and the Kelim of Tikkun, the vessels from the world of order, the ability to articulate, to experience through the lowest possible depths of consciousness, starting from there and going up. Everything depends on the lowest level, where we actually stand as in a physical body. That's what determines everything that goes on high. So that's the picture. Moshe battles it out with Pare. He battles it out. Moshe can't talk. He has a lot of things to say, but can't talk. And Pharaoh wants to get in the way of that. And Moshe never really succeeds in giving that over to the people in a way that they can immediately feel the connection, but it becomes something that they have to work on, ultimately to be realized as a victory to Mashiach, who is the one who teaches everybody how to experience it then on their own. Okay? So Moshe gives it to a people, they have a lot of stuff, they know there's a lot of wisdom in there, but they don't quite know how to apply it. They're naturally designed for spirituality, and they have faith inherent to them. They didn't have science class to brainwash them as kids. So they have their own advantages. They were much more passionate, much more powerful personalities in those days. And we are like the spark of a spark of a spark of a forgotten descendant from those sources. And we are the ones that are given the ultimate gifts. The king opens up the treasury and puts the foot soldiers. The people are just doing it because they know it's right, not that they understand it. And here they're giving this gift to be able to ultimately understand it. When the king himself is on the field, and he threw himself there with all the trophies and tchotchkelok he collected throughout the centuries. You know, he's passed on to him. And he never uses them. Here he is giving it to everyone on the front line. Okay, there's my 10,000th introduction. Let's see if we're gonna give this till, should we go an entire hour? That was 37 minutes, I think. No, 17 minutes. I have a bunch of sources to do all this. The first is, it's all sourced in this Basi Lagani that I was just discussing. And there's a few essential sources that he quotes that I want to learn with you inside the text, because this is supposed to be different from my morning classes, which is just like my own summary of things usually. This is supposed to be a class. You're supposed to link these things up and follow along. So I'm going to try and actually send these links in real time. I daren't miss my... Here, I'll put it in different places, not to get confused. And I'm just going to post the source. Maybe I'll add to it. I'll just edit it and put other sources as we go. So there's the first source. It's Rambam's introduction to Mishnayos. It says like this. I'm just going to translate it on my own. There's a translation here, but I think I'm going to... So here we're quoting Ben Zoma, who we spoke about last week, but we said he's an otherworldly person. He was standing on the Temple Mount, and he saw the Jewish people, right? They were making pilgrimage. And he says a blessing to God. He says, "Blessed is he who created all of these people to serve me." This great sage is saying, look at all these masses. And they were coming with usually sacrifices, so they're bringing on their whole like caravan of donkeys, not donkeys stacked, but I mean, they have to bring a lot of food with them too, right? But they end up bringing the bulls, and so it looked like a whole herd of people flocking by, right? So it'd probably be easier on Pesach. They could do it like a little lamb. And it's just easier to move about. But he sees all these people coming to the Temple Mount, and he says, "Wow, Hashem, you're so great for creating all these people to serve me." And this is an idea that's explained in the sources that I hope to get to, please God, in the next few minutes, or the rest of the hour, that express these ideas very succinctly. So, to explain what it seems like a show of pride, because it's difficult to understand. Ki haya yachid b'deirei. He was the unique individual of an entire generation, someone that was completely devoted. And here we're going to take this to a discussion of how is everybody able to fulfill the mitzvah of having dveikus if Hashem's a consuming fire? This is the kind of person that was able to do that. And everybody else occupies a role whereby they can be a part of that or against it, right? So they're intended, you become part of this process and achieve the same type of merit, let's say, or benefit or experience, even if you don't experience it in a way that is textbook religion. Okay? So the textbook religious Jewish approach to dveikus is when you're davening. Some people make it possible to daven. For example, my good friends of my shul are dedicating, they're joining forces with me, I Scott Ball Motion, to make our shul look respectable and dignified and honorable. So let's say there's one person in that shul that's using that place as a means to simply fulfill this fundamental foundation of Judaism, to have dveikus. It's the point of the world to bring about a society that's filled with experience and knowledge of Hashem in order to express dveikus. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do when things are good and when things end up being miraculously plentiful, as the promise goes, and I hope you're experiencing that in your life. Then what do? It's the existential question. What am I going to do now? I got my office. I set up all my pencils, they're all sharpened. I'm kicking my feet up. I've done that for 5 minutes now, a half an hour, and the whole day. And what am I supposed to do with this whole operation? And that is actually the point. So the way to get there is the same way as getting there. I mean to say that the world is promised to all get there. And the way to get there is through bringing this in little by little now. In amongst the darkness we spoke about, I think, last week. Specifically in the darkness, this is able to burst through. And that becomes the force to make the tidal wave. That becomes the Maleh Haaretz Dea, an ocean of knowledge, of experience. So the way to achieve that, if you're not that kind of person, is by identifying in some way or supporting in some way that type of person. And you could click the button and donate 50 kopecks. No, I'm just kidding. But we're actually getting one of those things that you could just beam like $5 to. We want to support this brilliant organization, High Lifeline, which provides for suffering families that are going through, parents that are going through an illness. May Hashem spare us. And we're going to get one of those, Blenader, to sit there, you just tap your phone on it and you give $5. What an incredible thing. And what a good way just to give a person an opportunity to do good in a very easy, sophisticated, technologically up-to-date way. Okay, so that's the topic. What does that mean? Rambam goes through at length why every single detail exists in the world and how everything contributes to this one person. But I think I want to spend my time doing the Hasidic interpretation of this, which cites this. I just gotta find the right tab. I got like 10,000 tabs open. I know how to find this really easy. I sent it to my son. Here, it's called Safnas Paneach. I think it's number 23. I'm gonna put a link. Here, let's start at number 30. I still think I went to 23 with him. Okay, let's just try this. Okay, I'm posting that now. You're supposed to click these, people. Follow along. You'll get a much richer experience if your Hebrew is up to speed. If not, start with point 1. Okay, so this is what I was introducing before. It says in Gemara, Ubay Sidbak, you're supposed to cleave to Hashem. It's Devarim 10:20. Is it possible? The author asks. Oh no, this is the Gemara. It's quoting the Gemara. Is it possible to cleave to the Shekhinah, the divine presence? That is a consuming fire. Rather, you're supposed to cleave to Talmidei Chachamim, sages, scholars, people that devote their life to a spiritual life, let's say, more particularly, as we'll see. So that seems to imply that it's impossible to cleave to Hashem. And it's simply like taking the matter away from its literal meaning. And so therefore, we're rejecting that as the sort of, if we say that that's all that this means, and it's missing the big picture. So, and also, how could it be then, if it's impossible to cleave to Hashem directly, that even these great sages can do that? If Hashem's a consuming fire, in what way are they able to do that? So it might not help if you're cleaving to a Talmid Chacham, to a sage that isn't even experiencing it himself. So this is understood in light of the idea that I said at some length. I might skip or summarize this again. That it says that Hashem will dwell not in the sanctuary, but it says in you, and it's in the plural and not the singular. Why is it plural? Because when you're talking about plurality, everyone's different, and they lack joint common purpose. They lack the solidarity of representing one thing, in which case it would have said V'seichai. It goes on to say here, it would have said, in him, God promises to dwell in the person, in the individual, because all the individuals of the nation serve this common goal, and it applies to all of them. So here we say that that's the reason why it says in the plural, I will dwell in you in the plural. Hebrew works that way. That it's like, it's not V'seichai in it, but in them. Or in him, it's not in him, it's in them. And them means every person has access to this, some not through the way of the sage. Both the sage and the person have the same goal, but one person gets it directly and in representing the other people who also commit towards being behind and making a world that supports that. Even to the point of just having a world of a common fellowship in the world. It is talking about a chabura, a type of brotherhood. So the tzaddik is not this person that's completely alone, but he has the potential of being part of a nation by having the entire nation recognizing the importance of what he's accomplished. Thank you. Are you following the sources? There's some people writing here. Let me just see if there's any questions relevant. Morris is another name for Moshe, as well as Munoz with some kind of like Viking dots on it. I think, if I see it right. Performing Mila on Malchus, maybe. So Malchus becomes able to speak. The heart is not able to properly shine until it's circumcised. The heart. So Hashem is going to do that. We do the outer, the rough environment, but the deep inner miracle of transformation is something that Hashem will do once you did your part. Okay, that's a side point. Okay, he quotes another thing about shepherds and sheep, and whether it's plural or singular. And it gives an example. It says in the Gemara site, it says regarding Shmuel HaKatan, this Talmudic sage, that he was fit, that the divine presence should be experienced by him. But the generation was not worthy of that. So, we see that the generation held back this experience from this holy person. He didn't experience the Shekhinah, at least to some degree, because of the people around him. Although the nation is righteous, and therefore it's fitting to say that Hashem will dwell within him in the singular, whereas not the case that it says in the plural. So in what way is the nation involved in this and in this process? It seems to be dependent on the nation to be, and we're going to see is that if you don't have a people, a humanity that creates a world where it's possible to devote yourself to these things, then the person can be held back. So there is a lot of mutual dependency between the rabble I mean, I don't mean that seriously. The uninitiated or preoccupied masses compared to this unique person that totally gave himself towards this purpose. So if the environment does not allow, there's no infrastructure for such activity, like for example, Europe during the 40s, may it never repeat. So once you have peace and a coherent society, you can allow a person to have solitude. So the person needs a certain amount of solitude, of respect for his space. He has to have, I guess, a certain like financial situation that allows him to have a house that he could have peace in and not have like cats and dogs running around all the time. He needs a great preparation. He needs an infrastructure, is how I'm going to translate it, that to assist him, that he will be able to devote himself to this solitude, to be able to cleave to Hashem. Tzafnas Pneach writes here. And the fact that Ben Zayma, another interpretation, each one we said were linked last week, it says, and we quoted this Gemara earlier, that blessed is Hashem who created all these masses to serve me, he says. The Kamei Shebiar Tizel Derech HaRambam, as Rambam quotes the Rambam here. That's how I got this through cross-referencing. Sheksav Ein Yitzur Maimra Chazal. Eich, rather. How are you supposed to understand, the sages, what they teach, that Hashem only has representation from the legal writings that describe what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do? That is difficult to understand in light of the fact that we're a sheep, or we're a sheep amongst 70 wolves. And it's very difficult to set things up in such a way where you can do this. And therefore, the mitzvah to obey Sidbak, that you're supposed to cleave to Hashem, is not for every person. Even amongst scholars, it's only unique sages that achieve this. By putting aside all matters of worldly concern and to devote themselves to this inwardness. And that is the person about whom it says, in Pirkei Avos, it says, in a place where there are no men, strive to be that man, to be the one who seeks the solitude to be able to achieve this. I mean, you're shutting everything else out in order to experience the source of everything, in a way of saying it. V'letaiva yivakesh nifrad. And if he were to have desire for anything besides that, he will be separated from that. So this is the way the sages of the Talmud interpret the idea that the entire nation is charged with this mission of cleaving to Hashem. Is it possible, he asks, for everyone to cleave to the Shekhinah, which is a consuming fire? But people that are not of this world, they separate themselves from, they dedicate their life to something directly connected with holy practices, and merit to become a sanctuary for Hashem, whereupon his Shekhinah resides. That's the power of this unique person. And this is the advice on how to do this. And I thought this was powerfully innovative and like staggering importance of how do you then cleave to the fire? How do you have Dveikus? If Hashem's a consuming fire, how do you do that? You have to be likewise a consuming fire, it says. Gam ken eish eichla. That's what the person should also be, a consuming fire, and he explains what he means. He doesn't actually mean to be a fire, he means something that is accustomed to fire. And he gives the example of a forged glass that could withstand fire. And it does this or the person represents this idea by slowly accustoming yourself, little by little, as you could see from experience. And that's why this is not for everybody, because it takes a lot of devotion and a lot of withdrawal from things that you have to do. You have to change your light bulbs. You don't want to do it. It takes a long time to find the ladder and everything else. You got to be very organized, and Jews are not organized in that way so much by nature, I would think. We're much less, we vibrated at higher frequencies. Very rare to see handy Jews, with a lot of exceptions I can think of off the top of my head. Including my eldest son, God bless him. So the answer is, this does actually apply to everyone. Everyone does participate in this task or this mission of cleaving to Hashem. Hadavik b'talmid chacham, hamiskadosh v'zeich liyeit mikdash Hashem. By associating with people that are already on that path. Maybe there's only one or two in the whole hemisphere, right? But nowadays it doesn't matter, because anyone could just tune in. So what does it mean to be an Azer, to be a helpmate, to support this mission, that person could devote themselves to make themselves holy and achieve solitude. And the masses contribute to this project and become, get these words, they become a throne and an apparatus of some sort, something like Wizard of Oz contraption, perhaps. They become a kisei and kelim, like furniture, I guess, like furniture in like the most religious sense, like an artifact, like the Holy Ark was a keli, was a piece of furniture. So you become a vehicle, a furniture, a chariot, to the Hashras Shechina B'Seichai, to the Shechina that is in this tzaddik. Isn't that awesome? You achieve the same thing by just being a part of that project. By when you see him, you smile at him, and I don't know. And therefore it's considered as if the Shechina is likewise in the person who does not have the Dveikus for 3 hours in the morning. You achieve the same thing. It's the same direct or intimate experience of the Shechina. One person is living in and aware of it, and other people are blessed with what blossoms from it, which is a lot of miracles and a lot of prosperity and health. And therefore they fulfill this mitzvah of cleaving to Hashem. And also that answers why it says that God will dwell in you in the plural. If we're all devoted to different tasks and we're not called one unit in that sense. Because there's two ways to achieve it. And he quotes two people who speak about this. The Rambam and the Yavit. And we brought at least the Rambam here. So, or you could choose to be one of those people that does accomplish this on their own and actually experiences Hashem. If it's a person with sort of an authentic faith that expresses the inherent quality of a Jew, it's supposed to be that. This faith in Hashem, anyone can step up to the plate of this experience in this life. Or he could decide that he's going to fraternize with people that do this, or just they like their videos or something like that. And allow that person to have the infrastructure and the environment or the peace of mind, whatever it is, for him to be able to have the opportunity to devote himself to the solitude that's required, that he could be therefore fit to experience the Shekhinah. And that's where I wanted to stop for today. So I hope it was a full picture. Did it make sense? This is a chance. I want you to be able to ask questions. I'm prepared to stay here till 7:30 if there's a flow of questions. There's a lot to take in there. There's a lot of sources there that I jammed in from the sides a bit too. Thank you. Thank you. We could do a little bit associating it with my favorite book of all, Bar Malchus, Sefer Sichos. If the lighting is permitting. It's a bit dark in here. I wanted to have sort of a night feel. I do the dawn. It's always, it's twilight in some sense. I gave a lot of this in the introduction. I mentioned a lot of this. Here we say the difference between Pharaoh and Moshe is whether you have a kol, a voice, kol, with a vav or without a vav in the middle. So the voice, let's say, is malchus. Do you have a vav? Do you have the six, the male, the spheres associated with masculine, you don't want to associate masculine with emotion, right? But that is, in Kabbalah, it's the masculine, that is emotional expression. And the female is the voice, the actual physical voice. So Moshe has a voice that's missing the vav. He's not able to, you can't hear all of the depth in what he's saying because it's immersed in mystery. So his voice is subdued. And you're supposed to put the vav in it to openly bring this to be articulated in power of speech. So I love this is like a postmodern exposition of some sort into how the chaos of boundless power that Moshe represents is ultimately understood and experienced in its full depth. Have a great day, great night.